Welcome. I am Todd Raffel with ERE Media. If you don't know of us and you're watching this embedded somewhere, you can find us at ere.net along with other URLs, sourcecon.com, tlnt.com, fordyceletter.com, and other .coms. And I'm here with Corbb O'Connor. Corbb is a B2B communications consultant working independently. He's done a variety of work, including meeting facilitation as well as website usability, partly for the blind, his website usability. And that last part is what we're talking about today, and in particular, website usability for the blind of job sites. Tell me any thoughts you have on what job seekers experience when trying to get a job online if they can't see.
Absolutely. Thanks, Todd. I think the big thing to understand first about how blind people are applying for jobs online is some of the software that they are using. What the primary one that blind folks are using is called a screen reader. And what these screen readers do is take the text on the screen and put a synthesized voice to it, and the blind person then listens to it, navigates the screen with the keyboard, much like we use keyboard shortcuts the same way, but there's additional ones that help you navigate the screen. And so it works very well on websites that have been written to have, if you have a basic text website, life is great. But as websites have gotten more complex, screen readers have also advanced. And what we've seen is that there are some websites, and primarily they tend to be the human resources sites, are not written in a way that those screen readers can see them. So you take the example of an image, maybe it's the logo, and you say, okay, so we put a little tag in that code that says this is the company name logo. Great. And that's been a pretty predominant practice since the late 90s. But what we've seen in the last few years especially is a lot of Flash-based websites. And so when you're using Flash, it looks and acts like a regular web page would, except that what a screen reader sees is this giant block that it can't touch, and so it passes right over it. And so what you find yourself with as a blind person is one of two things. One, you may not even be able to read the job description. And the second thing is a lot of those websites are using a form that you fill out, an online application that looks like the old paper application, so it looks fancy, and it formats itself so that you don't have your answers running all over the website when the employer prints it out. But as a blind person, you're not able to enter your information in that form. And so what happens is, if you're really interested in the job and you can find the contact information, you might email the HR manager. And now, because you're not like all the other applicants, there's the potential for discrimination, because here's this guy who needs some special accommodation. And even in the best case scenario, you're just not in with all the other applicants. So whatever process that company is using to screen applicants, to send automatic updates to them or their references, isn't getting sent to that blind person. And then, of course, the obvious other factor is that you may not even be able to navigate the website at all if it's completely in Flash, and so finding the contact information may be completely impossible. So
if you're a website like a Craigslist, or are there any examples of ones that do it well, or I would assume they do it well kind of by default if they just have a lot of text? Is that right? Are there any good examples?
Yeah, so you mentioned Craigslist. Craigslist is a pretty good site. Now, I'm not saying that you have to have a simple website like Craigslist. Craigslist, as you've pointed out, has very few images by its nature, and that's great. But a blind person doesn't need to have access to a text-only site. Some people have put those links in there. Websites that work very well for blind folks tend to be, for example, let's take LinkedIn, a popular HR site. Predominantly very accessible, and lots of people have found ways to apply for jobs straight through LinkedIn. And it's great because if you're a person that doesn't want to disclose a disability, you don't have to. You're just like every other candidate. If you take the example of other sites that are written that may be nice looking, they've got graphics, they've got layout, they can have just a typical web form that still, again, looks nice, but
Yeah.
is still accessible. So it's all the big factors that tend to decrease accessibility are a couple of things. One, the predominance of Flash. Two, when you have websites where the form fields are not connected to what the name of that field is. For example, you have first name in one table cell, and you've got the text field somewhere else on the page. Looks like they're right together when you visually look at it. To a screen reader, they may be at completely different ends of the page.
Okay.
So, another factor that can sometimes decrease accessibility is just when you stop using some of the standard language of writing a web page. When you use those heading 1, 2, and 3, and 4 tags, that's great for people with disabilities to navigate your site because they can get straight to what's important and go drill down into what the subcategories might be. When you start to use your own custom tags, maybe you call it page title, subheading, the screen readers just see that as any other text on the page.
What about corporate career sites, companies that are having careers pages for their own jobs, not an independent job or like a monster? Those corporate career sites, I imagine, I know that you said the video and images aren't necessarily the problem, but I imagine there could be problems with those sites because they tend to de-emphasize, at least when you open them, job listings, and there tends to be a lot of video and a lot of image and a lot of stuff about what it's like to work there, with the actual job listings coming later. Any thoughts on corporate careers websites?
So what we find with corporate websites that have their own kind of careers pages, you're right, they kind of have a lot of, for lack of a better word, marketing about why it's great to work at company X. And they've got testimonials and benefits pages and all of that. And the videos that are posted on those pages, the videos are tending to be in Flash. So your screen reader will pass right by it. So what some websites have done is they've kind of hidden a little link. They usually put white text on a white background, so most people don't say it, that says click here to play the video, and it links to, say, a page that automatically plays that video. So blind folks are still gonna love a video just as much as a sighted person would. When there's narration to it, when there's people talking, great. That's gonna work fine. When it's those kind of videos that are all text-based with lots of flashing in and out of graphics and the text on the screen only and music, they tend to be less helpful, but that doesn't mean you need to adapt all of your videos. It would be nice, but it's not something that needs a big expense. I think on those corporate career sites, what tends to happen with the job postings, as you mentioned, they're at the bottom of the page, and they're linked to as PDFs. Okay. And those PDFs are great and have the potential to be completely useful for the blind, just as they are the sighted. What sometimes happens if you scan a document into your computer, for example, your scanner could do one of two things. It might take it in and look at it as a picture. Another way it might take it in is it takes it in as a picture and then it figures out what the text is. And it's kind of optical character recognition, or OCR.
Yeah.
And that the big way to know if your PDF is going to be usable by a blind person or someone, and keep in mind, other people with disabilities are using this software too, people who have limited mobility, and their software is working off the same kind of triggers as the blind folk software. So the big trick to know as to whether your PDF is accessible, try and select some text and copy it to another page. So if you can select the text in the PDF and copy it into an email, you're in pretty good shape. Not always perfect, but it's a good kind of first step, and you'll get you about 90% of the way there. And then the final thing with those career pages on corporate sites goes back to how people are going to apply. Are you going to have them log in to create an account and log in? A lot of times when you have that, you have CAPTCHAs, those little graphics that are with funky characters that a computer can't see.
Right.
Make sure you're a human.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, a blind person's not going to see that. Again, there are some ways to make accessible CAPTCHAs so you don't have robots applying for your jobs. But a lot of those alternative CAPTCHAs, we're not finding too many of those. We're finding a lot of visual CAPTCHAs, which are, again, causing that blind person to be locked out of ever even applying for your job.
Yeah. I think CAPTCHA is the bane of many existences, not just the blind, but particularly the blind. Something I never thought about, which is very interesting. Great point. On that note, you've brought up a lot of great points, not just problems, but you've actually thrown in some solutions as you've given some of the problems. So thank you for that. Great stuff. Again, Corbb O'Connor, great information. Really appreciate it. Perhaps we can do this again sometime with even more information or more examples. Good luck with everything in the meantime.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Thanks.